Okay, hi, good morning, and welcome to Sunday Story Hour, where we tell real life human design stories of how it's helped people to share who they really are. Helps. So this is where people share those stories of who they came here to be and how they found more about that through human design. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Alana Heim. I always, in my mind, I always remember the little way that she taught me to say it, which is, well, she didn't teach me, but teaches us to say it, which is Alana from Atlantis. So Alana Heim is a 1-3 emotional projector. And I first met her at my first human design conference. She was one of the amazing speakers then, and I'm really excited. She's going to be an amazing speaker again in a couple of weeks when we both go back. But she's got so many cool things she's in doing, all these cool, like as if you read anything about her bio, she's been a co-author in 5 different books, it is, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to let Alana introduce herself a little bit because I can't even begin to do it justice. And so, yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, and then maybe just dive right into how you found human design.
Yes, I love it. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to share my story. I'm a 1-3 emotional projector. So the path for me is all internal, which is such a unique piece given we're projectors, and projectors, we're usually focused on everybody else. So the main piece, I came from the financial industry, the accounting world, financial planning. It was very left brain, very forceful energy, right? Strategy, structure, planning, all the things that are unwinding on the planet. So it's no surprise for me that 7 years ago, I started my business, Prosperity Alignment, left behind the financial industry, knowing that we didn't help people understand themselves, right? We didn't use cool tools like human design or gene keys, right, or anything that really helps you to know your relationship with self, relationship with money, the emotions, the fears, all the pieces that are so important. And I did a lot of estate work. So when people pass, and then the heirs come in with basically wanting to grab and have entitlement and take from each other, and just all the emotional energy that starts to come up around money, right? So I knew that even though there were the most amazing plans laid out, everybody would sue each other in the end. And they wouldn't talk about it, and they wouldn't feel their emotions. And so that's where I've shifted, where now I work with people more on that relational piece of knowing themselves, knowing how they operate energetically, how money flows through them and to them. So their own prosperity flow, using human design, gene keys, remote energy work, all the stuff a CPA typically doesn't do. That's the world that I've now moved into. So I found human design about 9 years ago when I was still in the CPA world. And I kind of realized during tax season, I'm going to listen, right? My 1-3 was like coming more online. Like I need to get back into investigating. So I listened to all kinds of summits, podcasts, things on health, things on business, things on self-development. And I heard Karen Curry Parker speak, and I ran my chart, found out I was a projector. And I feel like that was such a really big piece for me of realizing, oh, I really am that advisor, not necessarily the doer. And I made it a couple more years. And I would say the catalyst was having my twins, because when I went back to work, they were born April 21st, right after tax season. And I got to work all the way until the next January from home. And guess what? My environment is actually internal markets. So working from home was so conducive for me. It was perfect. And then to go back, I could feel the burnout just kind of amplify. And I was 35 at the time. So I was like in that window for burnout, and I could just feel it. And that's when I knew something had to change. So I made it through one more round of tax season, and then knew I gotta move on. Something else is calling me.
Yeah. And you're coming from such a conservative world, right? The world of CPAs and financial markets and all that stuff. And then you're coming into all this woo-woo. That had to be a big shock to people around you, right?
Yes. And I have the undefined spleen. So it was really interesting to be in that space of really knowing myself and discerning the energy. And my dad was so fearful, right? Like all of his fear started to come in where I'm like, oh, I'm going to quit and start a business. And he's like, well, how are you going to get clients? And how are you going to do this? And all the how, right? And I already live in the how with the 6447. And it was like, oh, no, this is my choice. And I was very aligned and more empowered with myself to know this is what I have to do. So I could kind of push that energy here, keep it here, and not let it come in, because I know my old self would have been like, ooh, you're probably right. Maybe I'm making the wrong decision. And all of these things that we learn through using human design, who we are and how to really honor ourselves.
Yeah. So that's cool. So then that was 9 years ago. No, you quit. How many years ago did you quit?
In 2016, I started Prosperity Alignment. So it's been 7 years.
Wow.
Doing more human design, and the energy piece came in more during the pandemic when I realized there had to be a shift. I was realizing that every time I heard Atlantis and read Dolores Cannon, who is a hypnotherapist, and all of her books, whenever there was Atlantis stuff, it just started to kind of come in. And I'm like, I know I was there. Like I just feel it. And so then I knew what questions to ask in an Akashic record reading. And that's when it was just like all confirmed. Yes, you were there. You're a healer. And I could feel the energy. And it was like, oh my gosh, I just know being a projector here to cleanse the grids, like I need to move more into that part of myself.
Wow, that was cool. I just had something come up in me when you said you had an Akashic records reading and you knew what questions to ask, because I did this little course with I'm forgetting her name, but the name of her website is A Little Soul School. And she does trainings on how to contact with the Akashic records. And I did it, and I did the whole thing, and I felt that I was in and I was connected. And she's like, on this little recording, she's like, now ask your question. And I immediately just knew I don't have my question yet. And I have not gone back and tried because I haven't felt like I had my question, but just due to some things that have come up for me in the past week, when you said that, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I know my question. So now I'm excited. I'm going to go do an Akashic record thing again. So, okay. But now for those who don't know, because, this call goes out in the Intuitive Human Design group, which has people of all levels. Some people like just ran their chart and know nothing. Other people have been in their experiment as long as you have or longer, so there's all over the board. But, Akashic records is not something that we specifically talk about in the group, even though I'm really looking towards finding more ways to talk about other things, because I think human design is an amazing tool, but it's not everything, right?
Right.
It can be enough, but
it's just another thread in the tapestry that weaves into all the other tools that we're all exploring, right? Because it's not just this one piece, although it really does lead you towards the gold mine, if you will. But along the way, if you still dive into astrology or numerology or going into the records or doing energy, it's like all of these different aspects of the truth are interwoven. And to me, that's part of my experiment, is seeing these other pieces and how they overlay and how they actually work really good together and give like another depth to your own story and truth of who you are.
Yeah. And so I feel like I got this big old ring hitting on the counter. I feel like it's been really huge for me to get to a point where I had enough self-trust, and human design has taken me there with a lot of other work, but it's been the thing that's allowed me to, like you said early on about realizing that you are a projector who's meant to go so inward, which, a lot of people don't get those conundrums, as Karen would refer to them, where, you're meant to do all this investigation and trial and error on your own, but you're here for the other as a projector, right? And you're emotional, so you have to wait for the clarity. And for me, so long, even in my experiment, waiting for the clarity meant figuring it out or waiting until I knew. Like I didn't really get that in my body until recently. And so I think when you get the foundation of what human design teaches you about yourself, like to trust and be able to be just present with the, oh, I don't know yet, and that's okay, then you can open those other doors as you start to get ready. But until you get that foundation of this is who I am and how I'm meant to operate, right?
Right.
And everybody wants to just get their chart and then start opening doors.
Well, and we think it's a mental piece. We
Yes.
think it's because it's very knowledge driven. There's so much information, right? You get your chart and you're like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this is. And so it is that game of like, oh, I need to know what this means and this means. And so then we start living from the head, which is really where we're not supposed to be. And we realize that. And that's part of my design. So head ajna, 6447, in the body, 3740, solar plexus to the will. Well, guess where I lived my whole life? Here. Right. Of course, makes sense. I went into the accounting world. It is all knowledge driven. It is knowing all kinds of strategy. It's knowing what to do and information, pulling all these pieces. I had to then go with my 1-3 into the exploration of actually going into my body. And this is what I see for clients. This is what happens for every single one of us. The magic of the chart, that blueprint, something already like opens up, right? A whole new dimension within yourself opens that you cannot unsee who you are. You cannot unsee the parts of yourself that now God, source, the universe is going to bring the test to see. Are you, like for me personally, am I going to go in my solar plexus and have an emotional experience? And guess what? For the longest time, I could think I was feeling and then not really be feeling. And so there were deaths and different parts of life that happened to open me up where suddenly, right, I'm crying and I can't stop it. And that's very real, where that's the emotional piece, where once you just have these emotions, you are in it, you're with it, you're feeling them, they're guiding you. And because I repressed it forever, it's like physically, I had issues in my lungs because I always held everything here in my chest. My core wound is rejection, which is still tied to this heart chakra. I hunched over. So it's like physically, emotionally, mentally, all the stuff starts to unravel. And that's me on my own personal journey. And along the way, sharing it, guiding people where they are, saying, it's okay. This is the cleansing. This is what we're all here to do, to release, so that we really are moving into this higher vibration.
Yeah. That's really cool. Now I want to, so something that I've been exploring, well, actually, I'm going to back up a little bit because so you found human design and you started doing all this stuff. But what I want to go back to is when you first read all this stuff and it was still head stuff, right? What was the piece that hooked you? Was there one thing that you were like, yeah, right? Was there
being a projector? And even at that point, because I'm very reflective, it's like my logic works really well going back. So, details, data, spreadsheet, I can go back, but I could look back and go, I was invited to get my first like real job out of college. And the time when I tried, when everyone, my teachers and people were saying, just go get a job, just go find an internship, and being interviewed with a company that was like, oh, well, you don't have any experience. And part of me was like, no shit. Like I'm in college learning accounting and I need the internship to learn, but it was just like a no. And feeling like unseen, but also that bitterness, like I can really feel what that energy was, where it's like, well, I'll show you, and then ultimately having my guidance counselor arrange and invite me to this internship, which led to me getting my full-time job. And every job after was always an invitation. And it was like, oh, this really is who I am. I'm not a doer. And then when you start to realize that piece, you start to realize like the exhaustion starts to want to finally come through. to say, yeah, we should slow down. We shouldn't push so much. And so that was so helpful for me. And then of course I ran the charts on everyone, found out my husband is a projector. My oldest daughter is a projector. And then when we had the twins, it was like, they're generators. And even that was like, okay, because it was such an easy space. The three of us, like we were just.
And twins are, okay. So I'm just thinking of all the stereotypical, like twins are hard, right? And you've got, so you have 4 kids.
Three.
I'm sorry, 3. So you have more kids than hands, though, would be for you.
Right. Yes.
So you need to work with your partner. And even then it's like one of you's got 2. Like that's like, and then they're both generators. So both of you take in, and I was looking at your sacral, no, not person, on the chart. And I know with my undefined sacral, that I have 3 hanging gates. And my design sun is also one of my hanging gates, like yours is. I see you have the 9 but that's your only gate. Your design sun is your only gate on your open sacral. I have the gate 59, which we are in right now with the sun. And I have it 3 times on my open sacral, undefined sacral. And then I also have the 9, which is my, that's my conscious Mercury. And then I have the 14 is my conscious sun. So I have all these gates that are grabbing energy. You just have 1.
And I have it twice.
You have it twice. Oh,
I have sun and moon.
Oh, and it's as your moon, it's what it attracts people to you. So this focus is how you find all of your, like, that's your real message with understanding your energy, right? And so I'm just curious, like I'm experimenting with how that feels for me with all this. So can you talk a little bit about what that feels like for you?
Yeah, I have 2 motors. I do have the will center and the solar plexus. So there is that part of me that just knows I can drive, right? And I can take it in and be focused, but my focus can still be all over. I don't always like really focus, but like when I do it, then it's like being hyper focused in the sense that I can miss details because they're both in the line 3. And I love though that it gives me this ability to pull in the energy and notice it and feel others' life force, right? So there is that piece too of recognizing who has it and who doesn't, but then discerning where do I want to jump in and take that in or not? And my old self, I mean, being an accountant, oh my God, I was a workhorse. Like, and I always explain what happens for us as projectors is we get 8 hours of work, we knock it out in 4 hours, and then they give us 4 more hours of work. And that's what we do, like 12 hours a day of work in 8 hours. And it's just go, go, go. So tax season's no different. Constantly working later. I was always at my desk. I didn't feel like I could leave because when I did, then I'd get called out, right? I'd be the one who would be like pointed out, like, you need to be back to work. But everybody else, nobody was ever told like, hey, aren't you supposed to be working? So I just felt like I needed to just sit and work. And I would.
Yeah. But so okay, so I have a defined will also and a defined solar plexus, but I also have a defined root. And once again, I'm looking at your root as it only has 1 flavor, right? It has the 1 hanging gate of gate 19, which is gate of sensitivity. And there's multiple names for it. What's the other name for it in quantum?
Like attunement.
Yeah, there you go. And it really is attuning, by your sensitivity, attuning to what's pressure is correct for you. So, so your conscious sun in gate 37 is my Chiron. Okay. So it's my wound that I'm here to heal. Well, it's one of my wounds because we know there's the wounds of Chiron and then there's the core wound and gene keys that comes through Mars. So I'm talking too many. I feel like I might be talking a little bit of a different language for a lot of people, but, I've always really looked at the energy of that channel that you have, that tribal emotional wave, that's so much of like, what do my people need? What do I need? Right? The going inward. And so this feels like the whole struggle that you're being asked what to focus on, being sensitive to your own needs versus the needs of the other people, and then that whole wave. And so you were talking about your open spleen in the beginning about something, and I feel like you were heading towards a point and I twisted you away, and I just don't know if you made the point.
Yes, that I could feel my dad's fear.
Okay, yeah.
He was afraid for me to make the leap
Yeah.
into, starting a business.
Yeah. So, you know, it's so interesting when you can get to where you can really look at the energies in the chart and see how they've affected, you know, they've, I don't want to say steered your life, but they, you know, they've definitely pointed you, if you've listened, they have, because I mean, you've got this Pluto and gate 57 both times. So that's about this intuition and the future, right? So about looking to the future. And yet the 28 is the other gate you have, and that's only on your design side, and that's about your relationships. So that really feels like it's speaking to the energy of what was going on with your dad. That's what you were feeling from him, right? So when you're describing what's going on with him, was that really him, or was that how you were feeling his spleen? Because did he define your spleen? Do you know?
I think he might.
So it's interesting as you described a feeling you got from him that is based on the feelings of those two hanging gates you have. And I just think it's so fascinating when we start to look at that in our relationships, and we can pick apart the stories sometimes that we have that tell us something is a way that maybe it's actually just how it's meant, how something we're supposed to feel. So that was part of your journey of you focusing on and being sensitive to and knowing what was right for you, right?
Yes.
Really cool.
And then, but the push-pull, right?
Yeah.
Of, is this really right for me and for my family,
right,
and for everyone else? And what's interesting is from learning, especially the 3740 and knowing it's planning and, and it's administration, like that never spoke to me. Like it really hasn't. And although I am the planner, there's what has spoken to me is to really break it down in my incarnation cross and to really look at the 37 representing it's the friends and the harmony, and it's like this emotional part of like really wanting to help the other, but then the 40 being of the will center and this resolve, and it's like going inward and feeling alone and wanting to focus on yourself. And it's like that's the essence of me as a projector, as a 1-3, right? Like going inward, but helping the other. And then 3740, like, where do I find that balance of being myself, honoring myself, it not being selfish, it not being ego, and then also being able to be of service and help others. And so this constant dance, I will tell you, it is always in everything for me, where even when I finally feel like, oh, I've figured it out, I'm in balance, I feel good, like I'm taking care of myself, would be the moment then my husband would come and say, you haven't been spending time with the family, and you're so busy here and you're not. And I'm like, I thought I was finding the balance. And then I have something that would show up and be like, nope, actually you're still too here, and you need to be over here too. And so it's just a constant dance.
Remind me what his profile lines are.
He's a 4-1.
Okay.
And he's self-projected projector.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So totally different energy. And so for those who are watching, and we're throwing a lot of numbers out here, and so like the 3740 is the little channel that connects the solar plexus to the will. And so, I find it helpful even now, but definitely earlier in my experiment to actually, when people are talking like this, to be looking at a chart. So you'll see I keep looking over here even at your chart, but the 3740 is this energy of the will says I can do it, right? I can do it. And the solar plexus is like, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? Do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? So you got to get both of those. You got to have, and the will is, because the will is I can do it, It's
Yes.
only I can do it if I'm rested, right? So that energy, when you have to, sometimes when you have two motors, it's harder than just having one motor, because you got to have both of those. You got to have the I'm rested and I want to do it together. And so,
And they push and pull each other, because
right.
I can say, I've noticed a part of my experiment is also noticing when my will is like, we are going to do this. So this happened last year. I was going to do this cleanse, 3-week cleanse. And I was like, I am all committed. I can do it. Right. And first weekend, it was supposed to be raw only. And it was, I still added a little chicken and egg initially, and then kind of eased into it. But by the second week, it was supposed to only be smoothies. So you could almost make soups if you did your Vitamix and blend it. But my will was like, we are doing this. And my physical body is starting to like break down. And emotionally, some of that piece is coming in, but my will center wanted to overpower. And it was a real big piece where by the time I was like almost to the juicing only, something was going on in my throat. I had a rash. Like raw was not good for me. And again, everything was raw. It was just the way it was supposed to be prepared. It was very hard because emotionally I was like, I can't quit, because my will center was like, you said you were going to do it. You committed, you're going to do it. You got to see it through. And in the end, it was like, this is not good for me. And so I've really seen it's like that when I clean, my will center is like, let's keep cleaning. And my emotions will start to get really frustrated at stuff. I'll get really grumpy because I'm not meant to go push myself like a generator.
Yeah. I did a Sunday story hour with a manifester named Monica Bravo. She's in the group. So if you're listening, hi, Monica. I still keep hearing her talking about her defined will, because I have a defined will too. And she said she had to learn that just because she can, and she can, doesn't mean she will or she should. So that's, I don't know if those are exact words, but that's the message I took, is like, yeah, I can do it, but I don't have anything. I don't have to do it. Right. I don't know that I should do it. We need to wait for the clarity to know that it's something we're meant to do. It's correct. I don't know. It's so funny. I find that the more I get into my deconditioning, I guess is the best thing to say, the more I notice that there's certain words I don't even want to use anymore. Like I really have a hard time saying the more I should. Like I should. What is should? I'm not going to do something because I should do it, unless it's because my body says I should do it, maybe to take care of it. But you know what I mean? Like a lot of the shoulds we have are externally put on us. Right.
Yes. And then lodged into our belief system, and our mental brain and everything is starting to go, oh, well, you should do this. Right. And I feel like that when my will has already made the decision, then my mind is easily like, yep, well, we should do this because we said we would. And that's the part where then my body was getting louder to give me the proof that this is not good for us. And even though we committed to it, we've got to uncommit and let go of it. And oh my gosh, the moment I was like eating meat again, and I've known this for a long time, and I know we're all supposed to evolve and get away from it. I need it. I really do. Like I can feel it, and my body loved it so much more. And so it's experimenting, right? For each of us, figuring out if you're a generator type, listening to your sacral, listening to what it's saying yes or no to. And it might be completely different than the shoulds in your head of, oh, but this is healthy and I should do this.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And, human design has the whole idea of determination that some people call digestion, which is about how you digest life. And so, it says that yours is alternating. And I don't know if you eat that way, but I'm just thinking of you making all these smoothings where you're blending all these things together every time you eat. And I'm thinking, that's not very alternating, right? That's like everything all together. Whereas alternating is supposed to be you take things in one at a time, whether it be information or whether it be food, and then you move to the next. And so, yeah, like I'm direct light. I don't always make it, like, it's not like I'll let myself starve if I can't turn a light on me or whatever, but I'm aware of how I feel when I eat late. And I'm just thinking all of that though, in that situation where you're not responding to how you feel.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to back up to the idea you started talking about, where we talked about human design as kind of a doorway into, further awakening. There's been a lot of stuff in spiritual circles talking about how many people are being called to awaken. And I almost feel like the word has become politicized now with this woke culture pushback stuff, and I don't want to confuse the two. But the idea that we're being called to awaken and know ourselves for who we are. And if you can speak a little bit more to how human design has led you into some of your energy work that you do and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we're this huge infinite soul. Like, we have so many gifts, and it's not just right here in this moment. It's connecting to the fractals of us in all moments, right? And accessing these parts of ourselves. And I would say, once we're on this planet in this physical body, everything that happens in our life, it really feels like it tells you everything that you're not. But really, it's the opposite, right? If you knew as a child, you're like, oh my gosh, I am amazing at this. And then someone came in and said, no, you're not. The truth was you are. And so we feel beat up, pushed down, repressed. We learn to do it to ourselves. And there comes this moment when the cost is too great not to move in the direction that your soul wants you to. So again, usually we think, I can't leave my job. I can't leave my career. I can't leave because I've got to pay the bills for my family and take care of all the things. And the cost is so great that you just think, I could never quit this. But suddenly your health wanes, or your emotions are all over the place, or mentally you can't focus and you're just adrift. Something starts to come in to help pull you in this direction that says, you can't live like this anymore. And it's too expensive to keep depleting yourself to this place where you can't be who you're meant to be. And it drives you to finally say, screw it, I'm done. Like, I can't, I've got to quit the job. I've got to leave the relationship. I've got to let go of these toxic people. And I feel like that's the awakening part, is we're recognizing where there's just so many layers on us that have been holding us down, making us heavy, feeling like we're sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and we're starting to shed it. And we're realizing that it's too much because we've thought we aren't too much. And the reality is, it's time to let all the aspects of you, the too muchness, the all the stuff everyone's told you your whole life that you're not, you start to embrace it and you move towards that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. So, it's difficult to find the words sometimes to talk about it with people who have not gone through a lot of the processes. Like, if you go through, for example, the gene key sequence, which gene keys, for those of you who don't know, Richard Rudd was a student of Ra Uru Hu, the person who received the original download of the human design system. And then he worked with Ra for many years, but he's much more of a mystic contemplative, whereas Ra always says that he just wanted to make music, right? He was kind of he's just looking for answers through his music and got this message. But Richard Rudd received his own transmission, which human design, I think it's very important to understand that when human design is really received, it is a transmission, right? It comes into our bodies when we get out of our heads. We'll start to really receive the information in our body. And when Richard Rudd talks about the gene keys, he really gets into a lot of the DNA kind of stuff. But I do think that if people don't have a basic understanding of human design, they can get off kilter in it. But when he talks about the Venus sequence with the core wound, and how we come with a certain wound that we are here to heal, that's not our Chiron wound, and that's different. But this is something that as we heal it for humanity, right? We heal a piece. And then, but because we have this core wound, we then have this path of experiences that we have said, And this is hard for a lot of people who've gone through some really hard stuff to say, my soul agreed to this. My soul agreed that I would experience this sort of horrible tragedy. And it doesn't negate ownership of the people who perpetuated the pain, but the person who comes in, I don't know. That's my whole thing. I have open ashna. I don't need to be certain. I'm just feeling into it. But this whole idea that we're on this path that's all about the world healing, and in human design, when they talk about this mutation that's happening in 2027, where we're all going to, or not all, but humanity is going to really, and we're already in it, it's already starting. The shift is happening, and it's about healing these emotions, right? And being able, because it's all happening in the solar plexus. And I'm wondering if you're finding your energy work, you work with a lot of people without doing human design, but are you feeling that is resonating throughout the energy community?
Absolutely. So the beginning of the pandemic, when I started recognizing, oh, I am Alana from Atlantis, and that was my name, like same name, right? I chose it again.
Oh, really?
And yeah. And just like the ignition of energy coming through and knowing, ooh, I had been working with spiritual individuals who would find me for human design, right? We want to know more about ourselves. And there was a shift that I recognized. I've been in a business networking group. It's mostly 3D business, right? Very physically tied to the earth, success, bankers, attorneys, accountants, realtors. And that's who I realized they need this support, because they're in this vortex of ascension. They're feeling the call. They're the ones also who are tethered to corporate or tethered to their jobs. They have the money, they do have success, but they're feeling unfulfilled. Something's missing. So flipping to help them. And again, they know nothing about human design. They don't know anything about energy, but just knowing that this is where I can already help them to start to shift in their own way, meet them where they are, still give them the practicality of who they are, stepping into these pieces. It's been phenomenal, and it's fun. It really is, because they have that sense, right? There's that lurking calling of like, ooh, there must be something more. I've never had anyone not give me their birth information, right? Even I have a client who's a financial advisor, and he, of course, was like, I don't know what this is, but okay. And every time, it's been 2 years, we still work together. Every month I just ask him, do you want to book another session? He's like, he's like, yep. So he gets how to use his sacral. He gets like how he makes decisions. And I have to be more practical with the information, but and I can only touch in and out, right? I can see where his brain melts if I go too deep into the energies, because he just gets it. I can give examples. I can say, here's what's transiting. Here's what's going on. Do you see this? And he's like, yes. And so we all get it. We all, whether we have human design information and knowledge stored and we understand it, we all have these senses. And really, I'm helping them to awaken in themselves, their intuition. Most importantly, where they're trusting themselves, knowing how they make decisions, knowing if they need to step away or be in their own space and make sure they're not being influenced. And I would say my ultimate goal really is helping humanity to not be here, right? Mm-hmm. To really get centered and be more present and in their body, aligned with their truth, aligned with their design. And so energetically, I bring in remote energy work. So I do monthly group sessions. I can go to my business networking group and tell everyone like, hey, here's my group session. And I have people every month are like, put me in, because they feel better. They feel calmer. They feel something shifted. They may not be as intuitive as energy people in this space, because maybe they don't really feel it, but they do. They notice it. They notice, wow, I really am manifesting, or I'm having certain things show up in my life. And so to them, it's part of their maintenance, if you will. Kind of like we maintain ourselves health-wise, we should maintain energetically the space to make sure we're clearing out everybody else's cords, energy, right? All the stuff nobody wants to think about. And I get to just be that conduit to help clear it. And then I do have a chakra assessment. So people who want to see the results, they can see where their chakras were at the beginning. And then each month they have this data point to look at and go, ooh, my root chakra is holding, right? And more of my chakras are staying open, which that's part of the experiment as well. That's part of the test. Is we used to all close down our energy centers because we didn't want to feel, right? If someone's undefined emotionally, they don't want to feel our emotions. So they just learn to close it down, but they should stay open to it. And now they'll be able to discern and feel it and recognize this isn't mine. I don't have to protect myself. I'm still okay. So the more that my clients are holding their energy centers open, the more their intuition is just spot on. They're, they may still revert. And sometimes I can see like, yep, your throat chakra closed. Did you have a situation where you didn't speak your truth? Did something block you? Did you go right back to, it was a situation that felt like being with mom when you were younger? And the core wound can weave into all of these pieces too. Where again, if certain chakras, like if their fourth chakra rejection comes in, where are they still rejecting others? And that's kind of the theme versus where do they feel rejected? And so I like diving into all of these pieces and really helping to unwind it so they're stepping more fully into who they really are and the powers that they wield.
Yeah, that's so cool. Now, the idea of remote sessions is something that I notice people are not really clear about. A lot of times I think people think a remote session means we'll be on Zoom and you'll be there and I'll be here. But you're saying I'm over here making dinner or laying down or watching TV or whatever, and you do the session, right?
I've designed it and it's so fascinating because no one else does this, but this is me. And this is just kind of being in my experiment, playing with it. I love it because I get to just be in the hologram with the group or an individual because I do it privately, but I don't do a call and I don't do Zoom. And the reason is I'm all head in Ajna. I'm will center. I already know that I can influence people with my thoughts and my will energy. And if you hear and know what I'm working on, you're going to go, oh yeah, that's what I'm feeling. Oh yeah, I feel her there. But if you consciously don't know what I'm doing and you give yourself the space to receive, to truly just be in that space, which again, most of us as humans, we don't know how to just receive. We're always giving. So they get to lay, or like you said, even if they are busy, they can still receive. And some people feel it. And later, if I talk to them before I give notes, they might be like, ooh, tell me what you were doing at this point, because I just started crying. Something released. And I would be like, oh, I was doing this protocol, or I try and figure it out. But it's a few days later. I give plenty of space for whatever needs to come through, cleansing, recognizing, feeling, noticing. I then send notes to say, here's what I worked on, here's where I was. And then I've been doing it almost 2 years. I record the transmission because it really is capturing that essence and that energy in that moment, that if they want to come back and actually have a conscious experience and listen to it, it's like their body already knows. But now their mind gets to know what's going on or what they're feeling. So it's just a really cool process. It's really fun for me. I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so what sort of modalities do you work with now, without, not trying to ask for your secret sauce or anything, but just as you've evolved in this, what sort of modalities have you started to bring into your energy work? I know you said the Akashic records.
And I don't do Akashic record reading. I've learned in the last couple of years, like stop trying to want to have all the modalities, right? Because there's plenty of people who do Akashic records. Go there. I don't do astrology. I sometimes will weave in like pieces, right? I'm always looking at transits. I'll weave in some aspects of astrology a little, but it's very minimal, some numerology, because it's like, it just, again, but everything kind of downloads, and I kind of know where the parts are. So energetically, I'm in a Neo-Shamanic academy. And so it's a very deep, partially shamanic, partially just energy work. It's not Reiki. It is so much deeper in the sense that I really can go into different levels of the field and be working to clear. I can remove entities, restructure chakras and organs and clear meridians, and really go through each of the energy systems. And again, it's all intuitively guided, me trusting, and then having that undefined spleen. There's times I feel something in my body and I'm like, oh yeah, this isn't me. Okay, I'm going to clear this in the person. And so I talk. I use sound. Again, it's intuitive. I've had some past life regressions. I don't do past life regressions. I do them on myself, in the sense that I'm starting to see and have a sense, and I know, okay, something's here, and then it starts to come to me, and I know how to work in that space. I do some compassion work to help bring in and integrate that part. Anything else? Oh, I do. I release trauma from the bones. It's like one of my favorite tools. And again, I can do that in person or remotely, but it's fascinating because the bones hold that memory of when something jarred or something hit or whatever it is, right? And then we think it's the muscle, we think it's a tendon, a ligament, that something's wrong. And really, if the bones are not properly aligned, it goes down the body, right? And we start having pains in different places. So I've really found that being able to release that is such another deeper layer of helping people, because whatever's stored traumatically in the bones, it can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be spiritual, it can be, maybe you were meant to have that part, and until you clear it, right, then you're on your journey in a new direction.
Wow. Okay. I keep finding myself just like engrossed. And then when you stop, I'm like, oh, okay. So where do we go now?
We're
Because
back.
I want you to just talk and I'll just sit here and listen. Okay. But so the idea of things, because our bones are like, that's the whole idea with like chiropractic medicine, is that's the base, the structure of everything, right? So you specifically target the bones. So because I know we can store a lot of emotions in, our, in our amygdala, fascia. Right, the fascia, right. I know for myself, I have had for a long time issues where I could feel it all in my fascia, and it really took, and it wasn't like a physical healing kind of thing that I did, but it was eventually I've gotten to where now that really isn't so much there. But I just recently was going through some stuff that I was listening to some very emotional stuff, and knew I needed to really pay attention and be present and not get lost in my emotions of taking it in. And I felt it. I was very aware of like, oh, look at that. It's coming. And it's like this thing where it was like protecting my heart or something, right? It was kind of made me think of what you were saying before about when our chakras close up. I'm very aware when I feel the tightness on my throat that I'm either talking too much, and it's taken a lot of paying attention to, because sometimes I'll feel it when I'm not being allowed to speak, where I feel like I'm not invited and I have something to say, right? And I'll feel that. And then other times I'll feel it when it's like I'm just getting the signal of it's not the right time. You have something to say, but you're not meant to say it. So like not judge. So it's been interesting to watch it and not place judgment on it, but to realize it just means I'm not supposed to speak right now.
Right. And you have a defined throat.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I have an undefined throat. I've coughed my whole life, had asthma, like athletic induced asthma. I know that had tied to my parents divorcing when I was a kid, and I had healed that later when I was a young adult. But I still would cough, or I would get sick all the time. And I was notorious for having colds, but colds that would last at least a month. And so it was always fascinating when people would be like, oh my gosh, I have this cold and I've had it for 2 weeks and it won't go away. And I'm like, what's the big deal? Like, it was just normal. But again, I wouldn't speak my truth. I wouldn't let my emotions come out. And more as I do this work and notice these parts, it's like every time I'd go visit my mom, I'd come home sick. And I was like, oh, I was totally fine, but what am I doing? And then feeling disempowered, not speaking up, because she's a manifesting generator. But some of the story would be, oh, I need all this help, Alana, I need you to do. And I'm like, I'm not a doer. But that mom and that pressure and just all this stuff. And so I finally had to be like, no, I'm going to rest. And so the more I honored myself in that way, right? 37-40, still like doing the dance. And I stopped getting sick. And I feel like the pandemic has been the greatest part. I've been sick very minimally. Like I finally have dialed in more and more my health and how it ties to my own energy and where am I using them? Because the moment I block them, I'm gonna feel it. It's like the 19 is and my undefined spleen, it's so sensitive. I've always known, oh gosh, I can feel it. It's coming. I'm getting sick. And then I would try and do all this alternative health and oils and all this stuff. And it was starting to get better, but it was what was really the cause is where I had to go into, right? And find out what is it that's showing up? Why am I upset? Where did yesterday, I didn't do the thing. I didn't say the thing. I didn't do it in alignment. And that's when illness would creep in. And it happens for all of us. So that's another fun piece that everyone kind of, when I have clients, they just share. It just comes out. I don't really ask, right? There's like a trustworthiness or a grounded calmness.
That hanging gate 33 of yours.
And so people just share and they'll nonchalantly say, yeah, well, I had this health issue. And I'm like, what was that? Where, what side? And then immediately it just like downloads. Okay. And then I see the chart and it just comes. It's like, okay, I know the imbalance in the energy. I know what's really causing it. And here we can talk about it. And then they start to see it. And some will start to have a shift, right? We can energetically clear some of it too, but it's more that inward piece, like you're saying, noticing where you're pushing, where you shouldn't, and where you aren't speaking when you should. And it's that dance that you start to realize it. And now that awareness can open up the healing, where suddenly these pains go away. We don't have to manifest it physically anymore. It's like the energy's here, but when we keep ignoring it, it's going to start to punch you and get louder. And that's when normally we say, I need medicine, like make this stop. It hurts. And well, yeah, what's the message? What is it bringing to you for your awareness?
Yeah, I've really been starting to read more and more. I think I always forget the order, if it's New German Medicine or German New Medicine. I think it's New German Medicine. And it talks about how, the miraculous ability of the body to deal with all sorts of things. I mean, you hear about how people, in World War, back in the Civil War, who, they basically amputated legs and, with a bottle of whiskey, and a lot of those people died, but some survived. The fact we all know that the placebo effect is a real thing, and yet everybody acts like it's nothing. The body can heal when the mind and everything and the emotional body are all in the right form. And I think German New Medicine talks about how it's these different biological conflicts and things that come up, and it's our body's response to those things when it's out of whack, stuff. Anyway, but that's been interesting. And I just want to point out that all these things that you're now aware of, these gifts, these downloads, these things, you were not aware of these until you got in touch with yourself, right? And I think that's where the real beauty of understanding and feeling and living into your human design is when you can look at your chart and say, oh, this is okay. I recognize myself in the shadow expression of this head and ajna defined through this, so that means if I can be aware of that, just like you became aware of the fact that your jobs, me too, the jobs where I was invited to, I had success. So I didn't beat myself up for the jobs I took that I was not a success. I now just said, okay, I'm aware of this. So now, and you just have that gentle awareness going forward. And the next thing you know, as you start to trust in your body through your design, you start to be more aware of, like, I have so many things right now where it's like, I can't even talk to people about it because it just sounds like, even me 5 years ago would have been like, that's crazy, right? I hate to even use that word now,
but there's like such an acceleration on the planet. So
yeah,
we're manifesting what we want faster and faster. Your
right.
learning is accelerated, right? It's like people who are finding human design, they get it, or the energy is just opening them up to move along so much faster. And of course, everyone always says, I hear this all the time. Oh, I wish I had known this 10 years ago. I wish I knew this like years ago. Oh, and I'm just now learning it. It's okay. You are on your own trajectory of growth, which means if you just now found it, you can explode and already have things open up and start to have more awareness than you ever could have otherwise, because it's that starting point. And it's fascinating because even in business, right? For me, being in this experiment of when I still am conditioned to push, right? Things can slow down. And the more that I go on vacation and rest, clients book. And so it's being in that space of trusting and just knowing things will show up when it's meant to be, when the timing is right. But if we're so hyper-focused, and again, I know, because that's part of my design, we're so hyper-focused, we miss. It's like we're in hyperdrive. We're going to miss everything that we just passed because it's a blur. We can't even see it. But when we slow down, we're more present, now we can see all the opportunities that are right in front of us, we can say yes to. And I always laugh when I'm meeting other business professionals, because one of the main questions is always like, well, how do you find your clients? And I'm like, I don't, they find me, and explaining, like, it's such a paradigm shift for us as projectors that we don't have to go out seeking. We just have to be ourselves and let ourselves be found and seen. And then those who are ready come. And that's my favorite part, is just making sure everything has been very open, easily accessible. Clients can book. I don't lock myself into how it has to be, and I have to have a conversation. And, some of the coaching methods, it's just trusting the part for yourself that works and allowing it to come in.
Yeah, that's huge. And there is so much out there that I was thinking about this when you were talking about all the people that you find in the business world and how it's moving into all these different things. And I've noticed there's a huge influx of new people into the human design community, but there's also this huge influx of people trying to bring all of that 3D drive for financial success and the controlling who you're in relationship with stuff into, they're trying to say, oh, here's a new labeling system to use to do all these things we are doing in this other world, but that negates the whole beauty of human design, right? And and I don't judge them. They'll get through their whole thing, hopefully. And anybody who gets taken in along there maybe they're a third line and they're meant to learn from what doesn't work, because that's how, right? So I try not to this is not about judging anybody, but it's just really seeing how that energy goes in there, but also finding, there's this marriage that's happening between, the spiritual community who's been so judgy of anybody who enjoys beautiful things and wants to have a nice bottle of, there's starving children somewhere, there's plenty in the world. Both of those things come from like a scarcity mindset. And so really embracing the idea that there's enough for us all to experience this abundant, beautiful life and not feel like we're depriving someone else by doing so, right?
Yeah. And it comes from inside,
Yeah.
right? Because if you feel deprived inside, that's all you're going to see. That's all you're going to project and feel and notice. But that's part of that aspect of life where your whole life, if feeling deprived was the piece that your soul wanted to have that experience, so that at some point it could have the revelation of I'm going to shift poles and go in the other direction and realize, oh, I'm not deprived. I actually have it all here, and that I can really love myself and I can enjoy these things. Then you start to see that everyone else can be in that space too.
Yeah. So we have just talked the entire time, and I have not even asked anybody watching if they wanted to ask questions. I know Mary Hobson, who has done work with you, she's watching. So I'm sure, and there's some other people watching. If you have a question, you can get it in quick. I might be able to sneak it in, but I wanted to make sure that when we're all done, that Alana, you will put your website and any contact information. Now, this thing the remote sessions you're doing, that's just something that I know you send out emails on that, but is that more about that on your website, or would people need to sign up for your emails for that?
You can find it at prosperityalignment.com/remote-energy. And I've already got the rest of the dates for the year. So today, the 27th, I have one at 4 p.m. The theme I pull from what's transiting, and during that time, 4 p.m. Pacific time, is the entrepreneur business channel, the 5432 is transiting. So the theme is invoking the entrepreneur within. So whether there's a part of you that wants to get out there, grow your business, find balance in your life and your business, maybe slow down, and it's whatever you want, whatever your intention. And then I'll be clearing and being guided to probably restructure some chakras or work on some meridians. And as it ties to really opening up the pathways to be able to receive. So yeah, I do them once a month. They're always on a Sunday, but they're always a certain day, because I'm always looking for, what's this? What's the energy, and like, what theme can we work with and really tap into?
Awesome. So Mary says hi, and then Jennifer Belcom says, I love and appreciate projector wisdom so much. Thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer has a projector son, so that's always, but she's a generator, right? Yeah. I had to think for a minute. She might be a manifesting generator, but I'm pretty sure she's an emotional generator. But anyway, so this has been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoy it. And your book is in the background there. Will you just say the title of your?
Yeah. This is 1 of 5. This one actually ties more to the energy piece, where I finally got to talk energy. And this is the energy medicine solution. And there's 25 authors giving you self-healing tips and tools and things that you can do to clear your energy or help yourself be aligned. And we have a retreat that is also coming up in October, where some of us are getting together to do hands-on work and meet in person or virtually. So I'm excited for all the opportunities and all the fun stuff that
the in-person part is in Connecticut, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. That sounds really fun. I'm gonna have to get some emotional clarity on that, right?
Yes.
So, okay. Like I said, I could go on and on and on. And,
me too.
Right?
We're 9-0, like
right. Yeah, right now we're 9-0, and with the transit energy giving us the 23, we're all like, I'm a triple split and you're a split definition, and we're like all hooked up. So everything's talking to each other. For those of you who don't know what that means, when you have splits, you have parts of your energies that don't connect normally, but we're all connected up, and it just feels really good.
It does.
So anyway, I want to thank everybody, especially, obviously I want to thank Alana for joining us, and then everybody who's here, either live or if you're watching this on the replays or later on YouTube. I know Alana's going to put her contact stuff in the comments here, and when I post this on YouTube, I'll put them in the description. But remember, every week we're here sharing stories of how human design has helped people to understand who they came here to be in a much deeper, more foundational way. And so if you are interested and you don't have your chart, you can go to my website, which is kathybashanko.com, same spelling as you see on this video. And you can download your chart for free. And right now I'm still offering a free little mini report that tells you some of the basics. And then I'm available for discovery calls at the same place. And like I said, Alana's told you a little bit about how to connect with her. I want to thank everybody. Have a great day, and we will talk to you next week.